So welcome everyone. My name is Grant Withers. I'm the co-chair of the Arts Committee at the Stride Burnaby Arts Festival, and I'm very delighted to welcome you tonight to Making Art and Living Artfully with my partner in crime tonight, Jane Appleby. Wave, Jane.
Hello.
There's Jane. Oh, letting in someone else there. Oh, I got it first, Susie.
And Burnaby neighbor at that. I grew up.
Yes.
We live
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Another Burnaby artist here. I want to give you a bit of a heads up of what to expect tonight. Um, we're going to be trying to kind of explaining a bit about what this title means. Making art and living artfully. There's a bit of unwrapping to do of those some of those terms. Jane and I have had many conversations recently, full of passion and interest, and cheering each other on, and really, we're trying to be advocates for art and artful living. And hopefully tonight we'll be sort of inviting you behind the scenes a little bit, sharing with you some of the questions and conversations that we as artists and as creatives have all the time. And we kind of mull over these regularly. And when Jane and I get together, we talk at length about these things. So I'm hoping that it's kind of inspiring for you, and it helps you kind of wrap your head around what art is, what it means, and what it means to you, what it means to the world. They can be very deep subjects. They can be very kind of surface things that, and I hope you just take away from it something tonight, something that kind of gets you thinking. I thank you guys for having your mics on mute for now. We'll definitely open those up a little later on, but it does help maximize the audio for our talk tonight. Yes, so do add questions to the chat window, and we have allotted some time at the end to look at those questions and answer them if they haven't been covered already during our talk. So we'll definitely grab on a little later too. Now, I mentioned that I'm a Burnaby artist myself. My background is in photography, so I'm an experimental photographic artist, trying lots of things actually. I might also call myself a multidisciplinary artist, but lately I'm trying to focus on the photography and the lens-based work. And I wanted to give Jane a chance to introduce herself and Jane, tell us a bit about your place in the arts and in
Yeah.
Burnaby.
I think I've been an artist all my life. I didn't realize I was an artist till in grade two, probably when a teacher asked me to help decorate her room and make trees. So I think trees have always been something I've been passionate about drawing and painting and exploring, and it's always ended up in my work. And I love to be around nature. It's just something that um, I do a lot of. I've become probably exclusively a plein air painter in the last 5 years, even some of my abstracts done outdoors, and now most recently taking that information and making larger expressive work, which I call lyrical expressions, because often I feel there's this music, this movement through uh, nature and through my work that ends up in it. Um, and it's funny that I don't know if you know this, Grant, but I used to love photography as well, and I wanted to, yeah, I went and did interesting work in the dark room and tried to do creative things, something new, something that alivened the spirit in me to keep doing something investigative and share that. Uh, and then color called me to, and the paint and how it moved. And I was just torn between the two, but I had to realize that I can't really do both. And if I really wanted to hone in, that I would take on the painting ventures. And that's what I've been doing mostly, and writing about it and then teaching. So I do teach workshops in drawing and painting for children and adults. And I've enjoyed that and being part of inspiration.
If you guys notice in the chat window, Jane has added some links. I did as well, but Jane has quite a few pies that she's baking at the moment in terms of art and helping other artists and putting her art out into the world. So do take some time to make note of those links and check those out another time. We'll talk a bit more about what Jane's up to in a little bit.
Grant, just sorry, for the people that just joined in, that the chat would not appear the way it was, so you guys might have to repost those links.
Okay,
Yes, just so you.
thank you.
There you go.
So it's a
Thank you, Subi.
all right. But I put my stuff up there one more time.
Mine's there again.
Jean, super. Thanks for that, Jean. I didn't know that.
And I read it for you.
Awesome. So tonight's session was advertised as a conversation, and Jane and I are hoping to make it that way. We've had many of them in the past, and sometimes we've said, or I've said, why aren't we recording this? And I hope that tonight will be as interesting and as engaging and thought-provoking as some of our conversations in the past. We've got a few topics we want to make sure we cover, so it's not going to go off on too many tangents, I hope. But I'd like to actually open up the conversation, or kind of throw in my 2 cents worth to see where it goes as Jane joins in a bit. Something that I've been talking about a lot is that I believe that art is everywhere. And we often rely too much on artists. You know, some of the people here are artists. I feel like I'm an artist. But society in general, I think, relies too much on artists to provide the art in their lives. And while that's great, it's very self-serving if I kind of promote that, but I'm also an advocate for artful living and living an artful life. And we'll talk a bit more about that. It's really bringing art, instead of taking time out of your busy life to look at art, to go to a concert, to engage in the arts in that way. What we're trying to say in our sort of living artfully philosophy is that we want people to realize that art is around them all the time, and in fact it's inside them too. Jane is going to touch on that in a bit, but it really is all around us. We have several visual artists on display in 10 different venues around Burnaby Heights as part of the Stride Festival. But many of those venues themselves and the merchants nearby are filled with practitioners of the arts. We have, I'm just off the top of my head, I'm thinking of Chez Christophe, chocolate bakery there that is all about chocolate. The culinary arts are very creative. There's the Adele Ray Florist, who's one of our sponsoring venues. These are creative, visual, sort of inspirational type businesses. And these people are living art every single day when they go to work. But you can even take a step back from that, and it doesn't have to be something that you've trained for. It doesn't have to be something that has been taught to you. You never even have to pick up a pencil to have art around you. So I'm part of my goal is that you'll sort of walk away tonight thinking, looking around you a little differently, and recognizing that there's art all around.
So Grant, can I ask you, has the camera helped you zone in on those particular things? Because you're looking through a different lens.
That's a really good question, yeah. I'd have to say yes. I get into a bit of a blissful state when I'm out with the camera, whether I'm looking through it at the moment or not. I'm kind of tuned in. And yeah, I notice things a lot more, that art, or that it doesn't, I'm not just talking about beauty or beautiful patterns or things that might otherwise show up on a canvas or something. That's not even what I'm talking about. But it's connections, it's meanings, it's patterns in life for sure.
Do you think they're enlivened when you have your camera with you? I'm just thinking of the fact that when I have my sketchbook and brush just with me, that I'm more open to kind of working the way I have through my art, and working that way through that particular moment or day, and you walk through and you receive this kind of art.
It does, yeah, it does, being out there ready to take a photograph, things are amplified a little bit for sure. But I even like to think that even if I don't have my camera with me, which isn't all that often, I'm still tuned into that. It might not be as intense, but I think it's spilled over into many other parts of my life. And it's, I've never been, I guess until recently, I've never been one to meditate. I haven't been one to be sort of really believe that I had a connection with my inner self and really wanted to explore that. But practicing art and being very visually aware and connecting with people, has kind of made me more open to those journeys.
They said awareness. I think that's the key to art. When we become aware of a need, or aware of beauty, or aware of a person or something that just catches our eye, because I'm visual, but it could be our ears, music, so moving. And it's, I guess I just always find it fascinating what has moved me. And that's the experiences I bring to my work, and I'm safe to do it there. So I'm just curious if that sort of has been a place safe to explore, and then it ends up being with you in all your instances in life.
You mentioned safety. That's a big one.
Okay.
I know a lot of artists might, and I went through it too, might go through an imposter syndrome where you're feeling judged, you're judging your own work or judging your own self. Am I good enough? Is this actually art? All these really big questions. But I think if you're really kind of genuine and honest with the fact that it's a journey that you're on, as opposed to some bar you're trying to meet, then I think safety and confidence can come from that as both a practicing artist, but also as someone who's perhaps initially uncomfortable about sort of opening up to those broader perceptions of artfulness around them.
And do you think as a child you had more freedom to do that in, and it's something that we build on through life, like we get more and more of it? I've wondered that.
The apprehension, you mean? Yeah, totally. I mean, when we're kids, up until probably, and I don't know if it's the same with now current generation, but when you're kids, everything is amazing. You just want to touch everything. I mean, first of all, you want to put everything in your mouth, and then you want to touch everything, and then you want to build it and tear it apart. But then, when you're a teenager, you start to get a little self-conscious, and then you start really sort of getting into a bit of a shell. I feel like I've broken out of that entirely, and I feel, in a way, not just confident, but brave to just. I mean, I feel like I'm an expert at doing what I do because it's only me doing it. No one else does what I do. So how can I possibly judge, or compare what I'm doing to someone else and think it's not as good?
So when did that sort of switch over where you felt that you had something that is your own? Like, did you knew enough about the materials that you worked through many difficulties in it that you found something that's your own? I'm just curious.
It wasn't that long ago, actually. I mean, I remember I was speaking with a sort of a life coach to try to navigate through some of these issues, life coach, business coach. And that may have started me on that path of, putting the imposter syndrome behind me and moving forward with some more confidence. So maybe, and that was, I think, about 5 or 6 years ago. And I consider myself a creative person and an artist for many years, longer than that. But to really kind of feel that I'm on a path with no clear.
And you're okay with that?
Destination. And I'm totally okay with that. Totally okay with that.
I'm curious how many of our listeners, have that kind of difficulty to trust in going their own route. This is what I challenge our listeners to think about. It's always, we want to please, of course, we enjoy other people's work and we want to have the same with our work. And I think it takes artful living, like learning from life. Things don't always work out. There's things you have to work on, things you have to be aware and learn and build on to make something new with, and be influenced by so many other things, and try to keep it positive perhaps. But I'm just curious if that is something that we all struggle with. And it just takes reminding each other that it's possible to keep moving forward in a direction that is our own, but it does include everyone else too in various ways. And I think that for me, that's what makes it doable. It's, even though I might be doing my art in solitude, I know it's influenced by so many other artful experiences. Other people's art, or the way they've solved problems, or even like the way garbage is picked up so efficiently. And I've always wondered about like mundane tasks, how much we learn from that, how much creativity we can practice in those and not put those aside as not being art. And so I look at those things personally myself, like every little aspect of life can have an openness to being artful. What is artful? That's the whole next question, right? What is artful living? Are we answering it by just questioning it, really?
You touched on some mundane things we see around us and questioning whether art touches that. And yeah, it's the creative solutions and the problem solving that many of us go through day to day with big challenges and small challenges. Some of those things I think fall into that artful living realm. Another way to think of it is that, and I actually want to read you something that I came up with once. The tools of creativity are within reach for everyone. Those whom we call artists simply hold them in their hands all of the time. So when I'm talking about, and I think if I can speak for Jane as well, when we're talking about artful living and building artful living into your life, we're talking about using the same tools and thinking about a creative endeavor or creative challenge with a certain set of tools there, but applying those same tools and the same way of thinking in our everyday lives. And I honestly think that opens up more joy. I think you'd love deeper. You'll be more inclined to dance in public when you're maybe feeling shy once before. Art and artful living is about a different way of thinking, a clearer way of seeing the world, and it's a beautiful thing.
And is it open to the other then? Is that really what the other person, because we feel it's sort of individual, and it is. I believe we each have sort of a gift that we can grow, color or sense or music or even patience. I don't know. Some artwork takes patience, but yeah, I'm just wondering if now I forgot what I just said, but my question.
You're talking about opening up to the other.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, we're talking. You mentioned about working kind of in isolation or in solitude as a sole artist, but there is if you realize that there are bigger connections at work, then that can build confidence and open up one's perspective, so you're not missing other things around you that are important or relevant or just interesting that can influence you, and you may not have realized that before. Yeah.
And what do you think about your work? What about you have a poetry zone coming up? People write, and I not usually consider myself a writer.
Same here.
When I took the time to just try to say a few words about what I actually do, I got more and more aware of what I was doing and building on it. And it made me hone in and feel confident about what I'm doing because I had a word for it, even the word we held up in our opening night, passion.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just wondering how that came into your practice, because to me, that's artful living. You're writing about it, you're speaking about it, and that gives it to the other as well, because somebody will read it, or you might just, I think it still goes forth from that inner to something outwardly.
Well, I've been asked, what have you been doing, or how's your creative practice changed during the isolation that has been COVID? And while I've done a few little photographic things, the writing and the poetry has actually been a really great place to kind of channel my energy and really question how art, or my questions what I believe art is. And that's where I got started on this artful living idea. I think I'd been doing it for a long time, but having the opportunity to write about it, just almost like as a journal, is how that started. And then words started rhyming, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, where is this going? So in some of my pieces that I've put out in the Stride Art Poetry Zone came from that period of sort of introspection and of exploration about what art is. And it has helped me kind of navigate a bit, or feel like I'm navigating through this COVID time. But I think it's also really helping me focus on what my art means to me. And I've realized that I'm making my art for me. I'm not making my art from you. I'm making it for me, but you're invited. So it's really helped me sort of sharpen my senses a little bit and help me with my purpose. How have you been still very busy with your practice during this time?
Oh yes, it's interesting, almost more. And I just got out to paint as much as I could, and then writing even in a newsletter about my latest piece. It just helps to keep moving forward to the next piece, because I know I'm sharing it in some way that way as well. And yeah, it's good to put time for reflection on your work. I think into living, and let that speak to you too, and more so than even like the critics, we could put our work out there and into shows, and all those rejections and things that come along. I think those you start to become just as part of the process. It's not something that should affect your work. And I think I'm just sharing that because I think that's always a hard emotional aspect to our work, to not be appreciated for what we see in it. But if I've learned to put that aside, like including during a time when you can't share it as much, it's interesting when we have limitations. And I think those can actually help us in finding our own true path. So I think we need to be open to those times, and not say I can't do anything, because to me, artful living means I can, like the little engine that could, I think I can. And it takes that kind of attitude. And that's the practice of artful living, to keep looking forward to other things to come, even though they're not happening. I've had some struggles with my abstracts lately, because I've sort of put into the work that I know I want to compositionally, using the elements of composition and shapes and contrasts and movement. And then I've lost some kind of rhythm in it, and I don't know why. And I have to go back and just go back to something more simple. Go back to just seeing, being in nature, looking, drawing a black and white sketch. And I thankfully have these tools that are simplified things to look at the world around me more simply, one word, or one stroke. And limiting strokes is something I teach, so that maybe we become aware of it.
It sounds like another crossover between the actual practice of art and artful living again. I mean, that term comes up again. If we're up against what seems like an insurmountable challenge or something that's really difficult, that what you're talking about is almost kind of resetting your expectations, or simplifying your the tools that you might have at hand, or the mental cognitive tools you have at hand to tackle something, and then kind of reapproaching it to move forward, but finding a way to move forward and not feel that you're stuck.
Yeah, I think that's the key to that. How do we look for new ways? And usually they say simplify, right? So it takes your own creative introversion to look inside. How does that look for you? Because it looks different for different people.
It would. Janet, I'd like to hear about what you feel about the statement, or kind of the flip side to when I say art is everywhere. And you and I have talked about how we believe that art is in all of us.
I think
we touch on that a little bit, but
I think essentially it's that we have the potential to do more than we ever think we can. And so it takes a lifelong journey to be open to learning about ourselves, learning what excites us and or doesn't, and who we are and what we can bring from within. And I think as a human, we have so many aspects. We're much more complex than just skin and bone, right? We have this ability to sense things, intuition, and a spirit in us and our soul that can come alive through art. We experience this. People cry in front of a Rothko painting. That's this huge, massive color. How does that, how does it do that? So art, right from day one, I knew art did something. People's finished product, but the way they lived and watching them live well and figure out life in all circumstances has fascinated me. And not that I know, really anything about that except my own experiences, but I've learned so much over the years in that's where I know that there's something in me that I can keep bringing out. And either art does it, or joy is being, out there and enjoying things that are even sports and family and pets and all these things just bring a little light to different areas within us that we can express, and we learn different ways to express it. And I think that's where we communicate with each other in a deeper level. And so what is that inside us? How do we stir it out? Now, art making does that, and sharing art, speaking about it, speaking about our stories, those are our art forms. So I think everybody's story is important, and something that I think we can trust will keep us going forward in making art. And so it's in us. Each one of us has that ability.
Yep.
I think we're afraid to, we want to keep it simple. Everybody uses that word afraid. We're always afraid. That's the worst thing that keeps us, holding us back. But it's not so much fear. I don't think we even realize. I don't think we think we have the potential. So I just like to say that we do have the potential. And I just tell myself that when I feel like I don't have anything inside, and see what happens.
Well, we've also talked, you and I have talked about the, hang on, I just lost where I was going with that.
Yeah.
We're talking about art is in all of us. Oh yeah, but I'll go back to what I said before about how we so often rely on artists to provide the art in our lives. So we go about our lives busy, and we some of us are lucky enough to realize that we can at least embrace or engage in art as a for respite, for comfort, to help us understand the world. But yeah, we often don't think, or it's not common to think that we have creativity in us, that we are performing our artistic tasks or artistic creative tasks in many of the things we encounter in the world. So yeah, there's that internalization of artfulness that does open things up, open up possibilities.
And then I always had this interest in what people call the muse visiting, right?
The muse?
The muse, yes.
Yeah.
And it makes sense to me that this is outer entity, but I think it's something that is also within us and starts to communicate with this muse that she does, or he or she does come and joins us in these creative ventures, and to be open to that. I think it just takes I think practice to say, I think I have this, what do I have inside, and how and have some time to listen to your heart, and silence sometimes can be good. We think we always have to be fed, but I think which is always good to do that too. But
I just noticed in the chat window as I was looking that one of our attendees said that I also think during this time of COVID there's a time of stillness that we can learn from, and I think that's what you were just getting at. That by slowing down or by listening to what's inside us, because it can be pretty noisy unless we take that time to listen. That there's that chance to learn and to grow.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. You mentioned the words that we held up. I still have mine from opening night. Those of you who were here on our launch session, all the artists participating in the event held up their word, what art meant to them, and but we didn't really have a chance to kind of pick that apart. Why passion, Jane?
Well, I've always, I think, been very pleased when I feel an exuberance or joy, and that comes from unexpected places. Two colors vibrating against each other as they spill along the canvas or something like that. and that's why I put mine in color. They did their own thing there, and so I've learned that when I get this exuberance or joy, that's what I really am passionate about. To hope to spur that or enliven that in others too. That's why I think my work, nature presents it. This is called Nature Rejoices. And it's the expression that I felt nature was telling me, even in its solemn gray days, it seems to have this life that I feel, we can live as well. And we're connected to that. And so express it. How some might write about it. Somebody might hug the tree. Somebody might plant a tree. Somebody may do something with the wood of the tree. It's just there's something that can grab us to enliven us. I call that passion that we can discover.
Does that if your passion meter, jumps up at a certain something you see or something you do, does that guide what you do next?
Well, I remember it at least that it's possible. Again, that back to the possibilities, that it is possible that something will alive it if I give it a chance. It's not always immediate. It might take some time to revisit good things and look after even myself. Like, it's interesting how trying to live well, eat properly, sleep properly, not that it's in perfection, but all of that, putting that into my life helps the passion come again in some area, whether it's even just to see somebody else's success, and to see passion around us. It's helpful and it's inspiring. So I think that's why I use that word.
When I
the word bliss, I can become blissful in it.
Yes,
But
they're kind of related, I guess.
yes.
The bliss part is that kind of state of mind I go into. It's a bit like when I'm out sort of immersed in nature. If I'm on a hike or I'm out fishing somewhere, there's this, everything goes away, the good and the bad. It just everything kind of just becomes the art or the vision or the seeing, and I have a physical reaction to that. It's amazing, and yeah, when I'm making art or out there with my camera or crafting something away, it's fantastic.
By the way, I wanted to ask you, Grant, about deconstruction of your work. You mentioned something about you break. What's that quote on your?
I like to something about breaking
Images or
breaking my art so I can play with the pieces.
Yes.
Or breaking photography. That kind of touches a bit on the multidisciplinary work that I do. I've started literally cutting apart photographs and turning them into something else that echoes the original photograph, but it has become something else. It's a transformation. I'm a self-proclaimed rule breaker and just trying new things. And part of it is sort of stepping back from expectations and rules and guidelines and deciding what works for me and being okay if it doesn't work.
So you don't feel bliss then when it doesn't work, but it's the times that you feel maybe a blissful feeling about the result or the process.
The process, and interesting you should mention that, because I was thinking about that balance between, or that relationship between process and product. So often we think of, I'll use paintings as an example, that we think that is art. But again, with this artful living kind of philosophy, the art has been happening for months and years, not just the painting of that art, but the living, the research, the trial and error, all the things that were going on in the studio in this artist's life. So there's way more art that is actually happening before that painting goes on the wall. And then the art disappears until the next painting shows up. And that's really just a physical manifestation or physical end result of actual art. And I think that's also a bit of a misconception around art, or it's part of the mysticism or the lack of understanding people have about art, I think.
Yes, I think it needs to produce something tangible, where in fact the whole process.
The process is art. The art there is, I think, way more fascinating. When I hear a really crazy, electronic thumping house music song that I, which is a genre I really like these days, I'm thinking about that composer, that artist, and the broken pieces that they've put together into a piece that is not traditional. It's not soothing in the traditional sense, but they've tried something bold and pushed their medium, pushed their genre to its edge, and then broken it and pushed and kept going.
And it's
And
interesting.
I admire that. I really
Yeah,
do.
and it inspired your work then. You see that the
Totally.
collaboration there of music, and it's interesting, it's music for you too. I've enjoyed theater in the same way, the movement of musical theater or dance, and taking that into sort of the way I move my brush. So all of these kind of things mingle. It's like making a fabric that my art then starts to be presented on, and it's just so nice to be able to realize that it is the process. It's more about that's the big cliche, enjoy the process, not the product. But what does that process look like? That's what we're trying to sort of bring out and ask our listeners too, for them, what are those things? Maybe write them down. Like you said, you had a journal. It can be little flip books. I like these little, I can quickly tear out a page I didn't like, but the ones I like, I go back to, and it reignites some other, avenue to explore and maybe play with. I like how you break it and then you play. And I wanted to really express that I feel play is such an important part of the process of living artfully. We forget to play.
Totally.
Everything's so serious. We have to make it award-winning or
Well, and I just noticed
frameable.
Chris wrote in the chat that rules stifle creativity and leads to sameness. Yeah, when we're talking about play, I mean, there are games that one plays within rules, so everyone's playing fairly. But isn't it way more fun? Doesn't it feel way more adventurous playing where the rules are like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, we're going to end up with things that no one else has ever thought of before. Thanks, Chris, for adding that.
So that comes to the point about, is there really new art or how do you want to speak on newness?
We talked about influence and creativity and originality, didn't we, once before? I mean, I've heard it said that everything is a mashup, and there's no new art anymore. I don't know about that, but I embrace the idea that everything that I've seen and done and heard, the people I've met, influence what I do. There's a street photographer, I think he's out of New York, named Jay Mizell. Some of you might know of him. He was asked once, how do I take more interesting photographs? And his response was, become a more interesting person.
Yeah.
And it didn't mean that in an insulting way,
Yeah.
but to be more observant about life and to engage in the world. Don't be an outsider so much. And I think that would apply to many different art forms and creative ventures, is to make your life interesting and diverse, and the outcome as a creative will be influenced.
Yeah, and I recall Gordon Smith, the late Gordon Smith, that's a wonderful expressive painter, artist that taught many people to believe that they're an artist. He's the one that I think that coined that we're all artists, and to believe in that. And he always had something good to say about the children's work. And I think that's what I have discovered. Teaching children has taught me way more than I teach them, because I see how they're willing to give into, whatever into their work, and don't have a lot of things they're trying to please or put into boxes of.
They're not trying to prove anything.
No, and so it becomes more authentic, and I realize, what does that mean for our process? It's their own. They might try to copy sort of a style they've liked, and I when I've seen that, I say, well, that looks very good. to be able to do that style. Now, what other thing can you add to it that you feel is just completely different out of the ordinary to see, to explore, to have fun, to play?
You're giving them permission to break the rules.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's just nice to see what comes from that. And then they feel that they don't have to. At first, I noticed they try to please me, like to figure out that I might say, oh, this is well drawn, or this is
this is a good piece of art.
And I've never tried to look for that. I've tried to look at the fact that they've brought something that is their own. And it's interesting that even when they couldn't speak English, a lot of the children might have just been immigrated or refugees that came to the class. That's art, that actual using their hands and materials in a free way allowed them to feel welcomed and to feel that they had something to contribute when they couldn't really speak the language or feel part of it, that the art was able to make them feel as part of a community. So I see art just doing so much, or the process of just being free to express, and you know, allowing people to do that to help them find out who they are and move forward.
We can all learn from that. I'm glad to hear that some students, some children have had you as a guide in that. That's awesome. I wanted to touch on something that I learned about you a couple of months ago. You've been very busy, as your connection, your contact info in the chat room indicated. I want to hear about this book that you have published. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. And it's funny, it was written very quickly. It's called The Purposeful Brush. And I wrote it to present and explain sort of my process. It's like, what do I do? This could help my students if I would just say, look for something, you know. Well, it starts off with, you know, we can all, anyone can paint. Yes, even you. All it takes is a brush and a purpose. The purpose can be many things, of course, and often starts as a desire to capture something or someone in a certain way. But it can also be play, expression, liberation, and revelation. In fact, for many artists, exploring the way they paint is an essential path to creativity and their unique style. It can also be a lot of fun, and it continues on. But I started to just write simple words, you know, open your eyes to possibilities, and included my artwork. Look for something that touches the heart, and walk, and little things you can continue to do. I say pray because I think that part of that inner spirit is interesting to explore. Stay and just be with the place or the thing that you'd like to express, and then start, you know. And it could be a simple drawing, and then I go into painting techniques like load the brush and ways to paint and things that correlated to other things like conducting an orchestra.
So a lot of these, I mean, I read through that book, and you're right. A lot of those pages contain maybe one word or 4 or 5 words. They're very, your approach there reminds me a bit of the permission you gave to those the children you've worked with.
Yeah.
Just to kind of nudge them forward, and open their eyes, open up the possibilities of what they can do. And, you know, just very simple sort of first steps, and then to build momentum. It sounds like, I'm sure anyone who kind of reads that book, or these children who are in your classes, are just going to build momentum as they get those kind of prompts and those nudges forward.
And that's sort of what I'm hoping for that to do. But all of our artwork and all of our lives, if we live artful lives, can do that. Nudge people to do the same. Look inside, you know, look for what is good or what excites us, and where we can find the passion. It could be like to ride up a bike. I find these bikers that go up Cypress Mountain with their bikes all the way up. I don't know how they do it, but you know, it's a passion of theirs and something spurred them on. And so to enliven that in us, and if our art can do that, or the way we live, then I think that's what we're here for. I think we need each other for that, and art is the best way to do it.
So find what you're passionate about. This is the call to action I'm putting out to you guys. Find what you're passionate about. find what gives you bliss, and
Yeah.
figure out why it's doing that, and do more of it.
Yeah.
I think you'll be better for it, or your life. I say that life won't necessarily make you live longer, but it'll make your life better.
And that's the purpose. Like, it doesn't have to be a big purpose. It's all this thing about purpose. Like
Yeah.
my purposeful brush is just to pick it up,
Exactly.
But to have a vision or another little journey or an adventure forward. It's always
Here.
hopefully the people that are listening might have a story themselves that they want to share, and on how they have kept going, and what has maybe inspired that they can.
Well, why don't we open up the floor a little bit? I mean, you and I could talk about this stuff for hours, and we have. But if you guys in our viewing audience here have a question you'd like to put out to us, or if there's something that we've mentioned that has kind of sparked something in you that you'd like to kind of get off your chest, or if you think it's all nonsense,
It's okay.
You can keep your mute button on if you think it's nonsense. No, but we'd love to hear from you guys. So if you want to put your hand up, or if I notice that your mic button has come unmuted, I'll know that you're about to talk. But we'd love to hear from you guys. Oh, there's some new messages here.
I'll just go and add one thing,
Yes,
Grant.
please.
So it's Chris. I write here. You had mentioned something about how how you had this life coach, that actually mentioned mentioned to you, and you were actually mentioning about this life coach, how he or she had actually kind of removed the shell, or opened you up, which I thought was actually an interesting point. I actually attended a creative photography workshop a year and a half ago, and I was an extremely rigid photographer. And it was a really tough workshop. The first couple of days, it was like all these rules I had were all just being trashed. But I let that go, and actually I joined it, and it's been really cool. So I think it is an important thing, that we actually think to ourselves: are we being held, back by self-imposed rules, or self-imposed beliefs, and what is actually art? So I think that's just an important thing. We should definitely evaluate that.
And it takes that sort of asking that of yourself, and your ears will perk up if you hear conversations around that topic around you, and engage in those conversations. Figure it out. There's no one answer to it. Thanks, Chris, for mentioning your experience there. Anyone else have something they want to ask Jane or me? I'll ask a question. Jane, or anyone else who might have an idea here, but I wanted to ask you, Jane, what would you say to someone, or what is your reaction when you hear people say, "Oh, I'm not very artistic"?
I love that one. I actually thought about that when I'm painting out there, and people come by and say, "My great aunt's friend loved to paint," And they're like, that's so far removed. Like, in my head, I'm thinking, well, what do you love to do? Where do you find your joy? And I might even ask them that. But, I just say, really, I think we can all find something to be excited about. And, perhaps you're enjoying your walk today, and that's art too. And I do try to sort of put a light onto things, the process, the life, artistic, creative living. Being open to the possibilities of having exuberance, passion, bliss. I think that's artful living. If you look for those things, seek those things, and then you're an artist.
Yeah, and there's artist with a capital A, and that's what everyone thinks artists are. But you guys, just by being here, have kind of shown us that you're kind of willing to broaden that, and you kind of, it sounds like, I'm hoping that you kind of get what we mean when we use the word art and artist much more generally. Lise, I believe is your name. Can you can you unmute your mic? Yeah, you got to unmute your mic there. There we go. Hi, Lise.
Yeah. Oh,
hi to you too. Just to mention, actually, I know Jane because of the COVID-19. I entered in the art group, and I saw her book, the book she just presented, and I bought her book, and we became friends like this. And I have her book at home. It's on my table where I clean, and it's there. So every day I open a page and I let myself inspire. Just look at one of her paintings. I just want to look at it, and I let myself inspire them. Can you hear me correctly?
You're muted.
I don't have.
You're muted, Grant.
Okay. It is kind of hard to hear you, Lise.
Could you go a little closer to your mic, maybe? Thanks.
Okay, I do something. Like this? Can you hear me better?
That is better. Thank you.
Okay, I just cut up the Bluetooth. I wanted to say something about. I did like so much what Jane just said before. For me, I just want to say it's my life. Every day, my life is like this. It's like all my art are reliable all together. Just for example, today, I was playing ukulele and singing with a student in a boutique, in our own boutique, and since I teach her ukulele, she keeps the ukulele in the boutique. And when a customer comes and asks for a song, and she sings, and they come. But after that, at the request of a Facebook fan, I had to go in the same town and get some photography of the lighting there, because my photography are so popular that people ask that if last week they saw like an example of the other park that I took the picture of, and they all said, we want the I told them that there was another place, so they just wait for that. But after that I finished photography, oh, it's so the ambience is so great, and the snow, everything. I have to walk, so walking is another thing doing with that. And like Jane, I know she likes to go hiking and she paint in the mountain, but like I do something like this too. It's like during the weekend I went in snowshoes, and I was thinking of myself, why the people, what they would think about this girl walking with blue snowshoes. But actually everybody like was coming to me to talk to me, and even a little boy 10 years, he said to his mother, I know her, she teaches to my school, she teaches music to my school. And then when I come home, it never stopped, because I want to continue my painting. And just to finish, to conclude, right now I'm doing, I started to give music lessons online. And actually the father of this little girl that is in my family, she wants to become an artist too. And the first time she entered in my house, she said, it was her first time putting the feet in the living room. She said, are you an artist? I said, I think so. She said, that's what I want to be later. I want to become an artist.
Really inspiring.
And I gave her a painting as a gift. And it happens that now I give her guitar lessons online. And today his father came on Messenger, sent me a picture of a painting that the other children, they made together, and now his father too is drawing, painting, and all the family is just enjoying it. And he said, this is so relaxing.
So relaxing.
And we
so there you go, full circle. Yeah.
It's never, yes, it's a big circle. It's never ends.
Over and over, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like
And
you've had a big impact. Yes.
again and again.
Well done, Lise. You've
Nice
had a
to
big
see you,
impact.
Jay.
You've had a big impact on some families there.
Multidisciplinary. You know, you got the
Yeah,
photography in there,
multidisciplinary, exactly.
music, painting. So good for you, Lise. I'm glad you're doing that, and keep inspiring people with all your work.
Thanks.
Yes,
Artful
and
living.
don't forget
Artful
that
living. Thank you.
okay.
Anyone else? We're pulling up to 8:30. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to share?
Grant, I think Ron had a question. Ron, did you had a question?
I don't know that there's a
I was just going to ask both of you, Grant, I know you go out and stand under street lights to look for inspiration.
Yes.
And that is deliberate now, whereas before it might have been an accident. I don't know whether you hike to locations with specific objects in mind. Your art in both cases has evolved over a long period of time. So when you go out now, are you more focused on a specific project or idea when you go out? Or are you open to whatever shows up in your experience on that particular occasion?
Thanks, Ron. Can I say both? Because I will head out with particular images in mind. A lot of the work I'm doing these days is sort of composite photography using Photoshop a lot, but using as much photographic content as I can. I'm not generating anything new using the software. I'm playing and layering and telling stories with my art. So I will go out sometimes with a particular vision in mind about how I want to see a group of elements come together, and I might not have element A, so I have to go and get it. But during those outings, I am open to shooting or capturing what I come across at the time. So it really is a blend. Most often, however, I'm just out with the camera looking and enjoying and seeing. So it's not all serious, head down, focused on a particular project every single time. It does kind of fluctuate depending on what I'm up to.
And I think that's a practice of artful living. Again, you're open to that, whether you go out and purposefully go paint something, like I would be to go paint something else might happen, and to be willing to let that happen. Gather more.
Mm-hmm.
Why not? Yeah.
Alberto, I see a hand there.
Hi, Grant. Nice to see you.
You too.
I think that it's art is very, very good in these times. It's very relaxing. It takes our minds away from all the problems, all the difficult times that we're living. And my work now, it's similar to yours in the way that I use a lot of Photoshop as well. And as well, it's not to create something new. It's just that I have something in mind. I take my photos, and then I I remove from that original file what I believe it's not adding anything to the final piece. So it gives me the time to be kind of mindful at the time that I'm taking the photographs. And then on top of that, it gives me the time for being completely away from any other problem or any other thing that is in my mind when I'm in front of my computer. So I think now it gives me double benefit to use these digital images, and as I said, it's very, very relaxing. It's wonderful, especially for these difficult times. So yeah,
It's interesting that you're using new materials, Photoshop.
Yes.
And computers. I believe there will always be something for us to use and to create with. And I think
they're
that's
tools, right? They're tools.
And so it's really great to hear that no matter what you have around you, you're able to have used it for a benefit of artful living. I call it, you're doing exactly that.
When I started painting many years ago when I was a kid, and then when computers started, I remember I started using at that time it was Corel Photo Paint, and I can't remember if it was Adobe Illustrator as well that I was using. And I said, oh, this is perfect. I can use the computer as my new media, but then I completely forgot about it. And then now that I took it back, it's been a wonderful tool. It's just another tool that you can add to your art. Yeah.
I've had the pleasure of seeing Alberto's art, and we've even gone on a few photo walks together, and I'm so glad you're here, Alberto. Anyone out there, any of the others who are here tonight, I hope you find the tools and the raw materials and the inspiration to kind of all go together to build on for your own path. Thanks, Alberto. Lise, hi. I'm going to ask you to unmute one more time.
Okay. I have in my mind since the beginning of the conference, and certainly as since you just mentioned something, I must really say that people close of me, they often tell me, Liz, you are a true artist. You are an artist in yourself, in your being. And the thing, the example I want to say is that when I do when I cook my pastry is like some food, and it starts from me. It starts from there in the morning when I put my olive oil in the pan. I put my olive oil and I saw a form arriving in my pan. And sometimes I did post it on Facebook, those, and people was, what? There's something. Last weekend, I made chicken with my mother, and when we take out the chicken, we saw on the paper, that is a parchment paper, all those spots, it was all like art. Art was there. And I took this picture everywhere. And I posted in my group, art group, and it said, you see really art everywhere. But this is my life. It's like that. I see that every morning. I can wait to see what will be the form in my pan with olive oil.
We can all. You're making me hungry and curious at the same time. Thank you, Lise. Yeah. Everyone, again, just like Jane and me, when we get together, it sounds like we could continue sharing stories. And Jane and I are actually totally happy to stick around a little longer if anyone does want to chat or ask a few more questions. For those of you who have, for all of you who have come tonight, we thank you very, very much. And we hope to hear from you if you've made note of our contact information. Definitely reach out, check us out on our social media. Just connect. We'd love to hear from you again. Jane, is there any kind of one last thing you'd like to say before we sign off officially?
Well, I guess the word creativity, it's a big word, but I just wanted to say that I think that's the same as living artfully is open to this creativity, which is impossible to define in words, but I think it's a mysterious thing that we can try to explore and experience. And to me, it's a flow of purpose that is something that we can all share. And so may creativity be with you in your daily lives and in whatever way that it presents itself, and may it bubble up in your art. So that's just, I want to thank you for listening, and may it be ongoing passion for you as well.
Jane, I cannot top that.
Oh, sorry. No,
That is fantastic.
just your picture would be great. I love your photography. Honestly, it moves me. It's bold, it's adventurous, it's has stories. So
Oh,
do
I'm
check
honored.
out Grant's work on his website. I love the Mondrian
Ah, yes.
influence. We could talk about that too, deconstruction of grid. It's something that inspired my work. So we all inspire each other. You've inspired us tonight to be able to share our words with you. And we hope that you will do that amongst each other as well. You know, that's why we have social media or just a phone call or whatever. And I appreciate all your artistic lives as well. So thank you for
So
doing that.
take the message out into the world and spread it around.
Yeah.
Put your work out there and yeah, enjoy an artful life. We're gonna sign off officially for now.
Yeah, thank you, Jane and Grant. And I just wanted to, well, thank you very much, both of you. That was, I think, very inspiring. I
bet.
think we can see the chat going, but I just wanted to also let folks know that, you know, Stride is going on for another few days until January 30th. And we have a lot more coming up your way in the same way of inspiring talks. We have another talk with Caroline Sullivan, who is here somewhere, with Bill Thompson. That one is coming up on the 22nd, which is Friday. Then we have a panel where we're going to discuss the role of arts in the education system, and that's going to be on the 28th. And we invite you to attend that as well. And then Grant and myself are going to be part of another talk with Caroline on the 29th. So those are all online, you know, artist talks, and we hope everybody can join. And of course, we have our ongoing, you know, events that we have going on where we invite you to visit the art displays and the arts installations. And there's a soundtrack mural tour. So there's so much going on. Please check out our website, and I hope to see you in some of these other talks or events. Thank you very much to both of you, and thank you, Suvi, for all the technical support.
Yeah,
behind the scenes.
Suvi at North Burnaby Neighborhood House, and Jun Wen, who's my partner in crime in the bigger community art world. She's my co-chair for the arts committee for Stride. So thanks for joining us tonight, Jun Wen, and for that plug for the rest of the festival. Enjoy the rest of Stride, everybody, and thanks so much for coming tonight. It's been a pleasure. And Jane and I will linger around for a little longer if anyone wants to hang for a bit. Bye. Good night.
Bye. Good night.